This is the MakeHaven badging video for bench grinders. So a bench grinder most often has a grinding wheel on it, but it's really this tool, which is a motor, often with an axle sticking out of either end, that has some kind of wheel on it. And it's on a bench. And there's also pedestal grinders that are on a pedestal. So this one does in fact have grinding wheels on it. And something that's important to note is that these abrasive wheels are only for ferrous metals. That means that they need to have iron in them. So not aluminum, not copper. Those things just kind of melt and gum up the wheels. It looks like there's actually a little bit of that action going on in here. Maybe it's aluminum. It almost looks like it could have been some brass or copper. And it just melts and goes into the wheel and gums it up. So we don't want to do that. If that does happen, you can take a dressing stone, which is just like a diamond face, and you push it against there and it grinds all that off. We might touch on that later. Just make sure to use a mask if you're doing that. So these are different grits of stones. This one is coarser than this one. I guess this is like maybe 60 grit, and this is maybe 80 or 100. And these are the tool rests. So this is what your tool can rest on while you're using it. You also don't need to use the tool rest. If you're not using the tool rest, you need to be very careful about holding it so you don't get hurt. So in terms of safety on these, they can produce a lot of sparks, especially certain kinds of steels. And you, as always, need to make sure that body parts and clothing and accessories don't get caught in the wheels. So make sure that everything is tucked away and tied up. You don't want to wear gloves for most spinning things in the shop. If you wear gloves, they can get caught and just pull you all right in. So we really don't want to do that. The things that you can use these for, there are a whole bunch. So sharpening is one. If you have a high-speed steel tool on the lathe and you want to sharpen it, if you have a lawnmower blade, whatever. They do spin really fast, and they're obviously totally dry, so they can get the material really hot. So sometimes this is not the best tool. Instead, you want to use the Tormek in the wood shop, which is water-cooled and slow. So if you are sharpening things, be really careful about overheating. Once you can see any signs of it glowing, you need to make sure to cool it off, because you're going to change the molecular structure of the steel, and it will no longer be hard. So that would not be great. You can use these for shaping, for deburring, if you have a piece with sharp corners. Some of the other wheels you can use for polishing and buffing. There are wire wheels and Scotch Brite wheels, which can be used for deburring, for removing rust. We actually have two wire wheels, which we can look at over here. So the one that's loaded up on the right side is a brass wheel, and this is for softer materials. So let's say you have aluminum or brass or something, then you might want to use this wheel. If you have steel, then you can load up the steel wire wheel. With this, you might want to put a face shield on, because it can throw these little bits of wire, and that you don't want sticking in your face. The Scotch Brite is also good for deburring, for polishing things. So you can take these wheels on and off. It's generally not too hard. You just use a wrench and put it on here and try to hold the other one. This time you could use a glove so you're not getting poked by the bristles. With the stones, with the abrasive wheels, you need to be really sure to be very gentle with them. If they were to get whacked against the steel table or dropped, they could form a crack in them, and then when you load it back up and turn it on, it could explode. And they are spinning really fast. I don't remember how many RPM this is at, but it's really fast. So you just really don't want that to happen. So if you are taking the stones on and off, just be really gentle with them. You can test the quality of the stone by holding the stone so let's pretend this was the stone. You would hold it with like a screwdriver in the middle, and then take another screwdriver and tap along the stone and make sure that it made the same sort of high frequency note all the way around. If it made different sounds or it was a dull thud, you'd want to throw that stone out, because that means there's probably a crack in it. So that's just how you test a stone. In terms of the orientation of your piece when you're grinding, if you're using the tool rest, which you just use a wrench to adjust here, then you're in pretty good shape. Just make sure your fingers are not near it. In general, you want at least one finger being used as a backstop, so you don't accidentally slide into a piece. This is spinning this way, so let's say it gets caught or something, you want to make sure your finger is stopping it from sliding out like that. If you're freehanding, if you're not using the rest, it's almost always best to be pointing down so that it doesn't risk catching, grabbing, and sticking down. So you want to be oriented like that if you're just freehand deburring or something. So that's sort of the orientation. It's again going to produce a lot of sparks, so you can put on a leather apron if it's hitting your clothing and you don't want to get burned. We mentioned only ferrous things. There's a picture of Ferris Bueller on there in case you were confused. So mild steel, carbon steel, stainless steel, cast iron, wrought iron, those are all ferrous. Spelled differently, but it sounds about the same. Then when things are getting really hot, you want to cool them down so you don't burn yourself and you don't overheat them. So this is just a thing of water. So make sure to fill it up with water. You can just dunk the piece in it so it doesn't overheat. And sometimes, if let's say you cut off a bolt to make it shorter and you want to grind the end so it isn't too sharp and it'll fit into the nut, you don't want to be holding something really small, your fingers close to it. So you can grab vice grips, which are up on the wall. So this is a pair of vice grips, and you could use this. You're just going to tighten it down till it's the size of your workpiece, and then tighten it just like a half turn more. And now it's holding onto it really firmly. So now you can safely, at a little distance, hold the workpiece and deburr it and grind it, whatever you're trying to do without getting your fingers in the way. To release the vice grips, you just squeeze that, and then they pop off. Those are a pretty great tool. We mentioned not overheating, dressing the wheel, testing it, different grits, tool rests. So we'll just demonstrate it now. And so we're just going to turn it on, stand out of the way. This is a face guard, which can be good for protecting your face. You just put that down so sparks don't fly in your face. And we'll just turn this on. It can be a good idea to stand out of the way while it's starting. So if it were to explode, it would happen when it's starting, you're not in the way. So now it's spinning, it sounds good and balanced. It doesn't sound like vibrating like crazy. Now we can just take this and it's angled downwards. So this is just me, it doesn't need to be deburred, but pretending. And then on the tool rest, you can bring it up. And you want to make sure to hit the whole stone. If I were just to focus on the right side for a little while, it wouldn't be flat anymore. So it's a good idea to slide back and forth. So you're hitting the whole surface of the stone. And in general, you don't want to use the side of the wheel. That you don't want to use. So you're just using the edge of this wheel. We'll look at the other accessories. I'm just going to make sure to steer clear of this. So over here, this is a finer wheel, and then this is a buffing wheel. So there are different kinds of polishing compound, so sometimes called rouge, which you can use for different kinds of metals. So we have a few laying around. You might need to get your own if you wanted. At some point, we might get one that's dedicated for this purpose, with wheels that are further out, so you can move your piece around it. But this is if you want to get a nice polish on something. So you would just take this, turn it on, and it looks like it's already, there's some compound in there. You just rub it on this green stick while it's going, and then you can buff your piece. So this green is it's a high gloss on all metals is what it says. So that's cool, but you would already need to get it to a pretty good finish before you can buff it. You can't take like a scratched up piece of metal and buff it. That won't work very well. So there are different colors for different purposes. That's what that is for. And then we can look at the other wheel. They also take a long time to slow down, so just be mindful of that. And we'll spin this up, and I'll stand out of the way. The brass wheel I'm not going to use on the steel, because the steel is harder than the brass. But on the Scotch Brite, we can just maybe take some of the rust off on here. So again, pointing downwards, never upwards. Just back and forth. And that was a great sound. You can see that on the top, it's just shinier than it was on the bottom. So that is how you use the bench grinders safely here at MakeHaven. Thanks for watching.